Welcome to the channel, everybody. Thanks for stopping by. What I have for you today is 3 Bigfoot encounter reports from British Columbia, Canada. But before we get to that, I want to go ahead and say a heartfelt thank you for everybody leaving me the comments about the medical stuff I'm going through. I really do appreciate that. I got hit with the 1-2 punch. I have the migraines and I also caught the virus. So yeah, for the last couple weeks I've been dealing with that. So if I sound a little stuffed up, I'm still trying to get over that, so bear with me. It's been a rough couple weeks, but you know what? Can't keep WILLSTAR down. So let's go ahead and get into these encounters. Let me show you the locations, and I'll go ahead and read these reports to you. Okay, this first encounter happened in 1969 in September in British Columbia, Canada. It's a pretty short report, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the investigative follow-up report first, and then I'll go ahead and give you the encounter. The witness described to me how on a warm evening in the fall of 1969, she and several others drove up the mountains south of Rossland, British Columbia to look for, in her words, UFOs. She went on to explain that going up onto a high mountain logging road was a means to get away from Smallville, and that looking up at the night sky was a common practice among teenagers in her community. At one point, the road makes a hard hairpin turn where a major creek flows down the mountain and into a culvert under the road. It was at this spot that the witness saw what she described as a large, gray-colored creature. When first seen, it was bent over, presumably drinking from the creek, and as the car approached it, straightened up, made a half turn, and stepped up the embankment and into the forest. Only the witness and her friend saw the animal, as the driver and the girlfriend were more focused on the road in front of them. The following day, the witness and her friends returned to the site, and it was at that time that they realized the animal must have been close to 7 feet in height, as the embankment that it had so easily ascended was close to 5 foot in height. Although they had looked for tracks, none were found because the ground had been frozen the night before. The elevation where the sighting took place is about 3,800 feet above sea level. It is of my opinion that the witness and her friend did indeed see a Sasquatch while driving that night. The location where it was sighted also points to the validity of the sighting, as the noise of the creek would have drowned out the sound of an approaching vehicle. Alright, now let's go ahead and get on to the encounter report. My brother, his girlfriend, myself, and a friend of mine left Rossland in the early evening, our idea being to go watch for UFOs on top of the summits. I was 17 years old at the time. It was on what we called the Summits Road, Old Rossland Cascade Highway, a dirt road with many hairpin turns, twisting up along the side of 2 mountains to the summit. My sighting of Bigfoot was quick, but enough for me to know exactly what I was looking at. I saw all of him initially. It was gray-colored. Then mostly I saw his back and his legs. Hair seemed coarse and thick. He also seemed more slender than I would have thought. He was tall, though, very tall. I'm not good at guessing heights, but if the bank was any indication, I guess he'd be about 7 foot tall at least. He was bent over the creek, and I assumed he'd been drinking water. He stood, turned, took one long stride towards the hillside, and then stepped up a dirt bank and was gone into the trees and shadows within moments. All this took place within the glow of the car headlights. For a moment, I couldn't take it all in, and then heard my friend, also in the back seat, sobbing beside me. All I said to her was, "Did you just see what I saw?" All I heard was her shaky voice whispering yes. She was very frightened. I think I recall her saying, "What was that?" My brother and his girlfriend in the front seat, brother was driving, never saw the Bigfoot because he was readying for the hairpin corner and was looking in that direction and not straight ahead where the headlights shone in that moment. His girlfriend was talking quietly and likely looking at him. She never saw anything. The next day we went back up to look for any kind of sign, but it being fall, frost had hardened the ground. We were stunned when we saw how high the bank was he had easily stepped up onto, maybe 5 foot. The bank was sloped steeply, dirt with some rocks, grass, and trees brush at the top. We found no footprints. Though it was quick, I will never forget what I saw. I can still see it in my mind's eye. Alright, so this next encounter happened in April 1974 in British Columbia, Canada. This was 2 brothers out jogging when they ran into this creature. On a cool April morning between 5:30 a.m. and 6:30 a.m., my brother Alan and myself are on a morning run where we resided, Princeton, British Columbia. It was common practice to hitch up the runners and go jog a 3-mile route. That morning, a very fine flurry of snows was falling as we completed the last leg of the run. Towards the end of this jog, we were cooling down and walking quietly towards Princeton's Brown Bridge, when something caught our eye on the road ahead, maybe 100-150 feet ahead. Taking only a few steps to cross the two-lane roadway, upright walking, this creature lifted itself up onto the single-lane gravel road we had just used over and over again for running. We stopped dead in our tracks by what we were witnessing, a huge creature, hairy top to bottom. We just stared in amazement. As the hair raised up on my neck and arms and tears beginning to swell in my eyes, the Sasquatch started to walk away from us, heading up the gravel road. To say the least, we were terrified. My brother, however, bless his heart, is very daring. Up to this point, the creature had not seen us. Before I could react, Alan yelled out something to the effect of, "Hey!" We knew instantly we had startled the Bigfoot, the huge thing swinging around to face Alan's voice and our location. What seemed like forever, a standoff of sorts ensued. I don't know about Alan, but I was shaking. The dark eyes seemed to look right through us, its head tilting slightly to its left. The chest of this creature had what seemed to be a thinner coat of hair, not as thick. The same with the face at this distance. A lot less dark brown hair. It did not appear to have much of a neck. As I mentioned, it walked upright at all times. Gathering itself, the Sasquatch then turned and began to walk up the gravel roadway. Alan asked me something to the effect, "What now?" I just wanted to go home. He wanted to follow the thing, but from a distance. We moved up slightly, watching as the creature rounded the bend of his departure. We never saw it again. Following almost 5 minutes after a brotherly argument, we noted a number of things to the incident. The skiff of snow was leaving tracks, a barefooted track, even after the time that had elapsed. We couldn't preserve them, however. My size 8 1/2 runner easily fit inside one of those tracks, with a lot of room left over on all sides. I'm 5'8" with an average stride. I had to take a huge step to reach the next print. The Sasquatch was something long-legged with the arms slightly swinging. Overhanging brush came into contact with this creature. Upon my tiptoes and on 1 foot, I could just reach the small branches. Estimation of the Bigfoot size is approximately 7.5 foot tall. Weight, God only knows this. A guess would be around 500 to 600 pounds. A very slight odor lingered in the area that morning. Needless to say, very little was said to anyone in this small town. Both Alan and I watched over our shoulders in the months to come. We spent so much time in the area that surrounds Princeton. We lived there for about 15 years. Alan is now in the Vancouver area. I reside in Calgary. The significant factor to this entire situation was my brother's boldness. If this thing hadn't turned around, we may have always wondered about the few options that came to our mind that day. When we were faced with the unknown, you can never forget those piercing eyes, scanning for our whereabouts on the road. I admit it even today. I cried. The sighting lasted for approximately 45 seconds, the longest 45 seconds of our lives. Okay, this last encounter happened in August of 1987 in British Columbia. The following is a true and accurate account of a Sasquatch sighting by myself and 2 companions during the summer of 1987. This occurred in a small gravel pit just off the Port Alberni Highway near Cameron Lake on Vancouver Island. At approximately 11 p.m. on a Saturday night during the summer, myself and 2 friends arrived at Whiskey Creek Pit as a result of a rumor that we had heard about a get-together of young people at this location. All 3 of us were 18 years of age at the time. I was a driver and had pulled my car off the highway and drove to approximately the center of the pit. The rumor of the get-together had been false, and the pit was completely deserted. As I was about to back up and turn the car around, my friend in the front seat pointed out what appeared to be a set of eyes looking at us from out of the darkness at the western edge of the pit. I distinctly recall thinking the eyes likely belonged to a bear. Out of curiosity, I decided to turn the car in that direction and drove a little closer. As we approached, I turned on the high beams in order for us to get a better look. There, caught in my headlights, standing at the base of the western edge of the pit, was a creature that was clearly not a bear. We were positioned about 50 to 75 feet away and had a clear, unobstructed view. It was very tall, around 7 feet, and very muscular with long arms. The creature stood very still and had a form similar to a human only much larger. It was covered completely in long dark hair, with the exception of its face. The creature's eyes had a distinct orange glow about them from our headlights, as it was looking directly at us almost as though it was stunned or thought we could not see it. For a few moments there was a period of complete silence in the car, as all three of us tried to take in what we were looking at. Then I remember becoming overcome by an overwhelming sense of fear, as every hair on the back of my neck stood straight up. My friend in the front passenger seat started yelling at me to get the hell out of there. My other friend in the back seat also became very anxious and started screaming, "Let's go! Let's go!" At that point, I put the car in reverse and I began to back up and exit the pit. The last glimpse I managed to get of the creature was of it turning around as well. We quickly left the pit and headed out on the highway for about a mile before I pulled the car over and stopped. Once we had collected ourselves, we discussed going back, but decided against it as we were still too freaked out over what we had seen. However, a few days later, we got together again with the intent to go look for footprints. We searched the general area in daylight, but failed to discover anything discernible. We did find areas on the sandy bank of the pit that clearly showed something very large had climbed over several times. Alright, so there it is. 3 encounters from British Columbia. Hope you guys enjoyed those. If you did, make sure you hit that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new. Share the video, that really helps. I need to give a special thanks to Maxwell Madison. He gave me a $10 thanks on my last video, so thank you very, very much for that, Maxwell. Really do appreciate that. Alright, that's where we're going to leave it, everybody. Always remember, where there is a WILLSTAR, there is definitely a way. Can't hold WILLSTAR down for long. WILLSTAR out.